Hi, my name is David, and I'm here to do a lecture video presentation on Bob Dylan. Honestly, one of the reasons I chose Bob Dylan was I always kind of knew he was this very legendary artist, and I've kind of listened to some of his music, and I honestly wasn't that big of a fan the first time I listened to it before I took this class. Obviously, in taking this class and understanding the folk genre and Bob Dylan, I do appreciate the songs that he produced and the genre. So, yeah, here's my attempt to kind of give a background about Bob Dylan, which we obviously learned in class. Kind of the rise of Bob Dylan. Folk music and the civil rights movement kind of added towards each other, and it kind of paved the way for this rising star in Bob Dylan. He was born in 1941, and he was the son of two hardware store owners in Hibbing, Minnesota. Uh, he was the target of a lot of racial abuse because of his Jewish background when he was growing up, and in order to cope this way, he kind of turned into music, specifically the guitar. He was obviously, just like every other artist, inspired by some legendary musicians: Hank Williams, Muddy Waters, the blues legend, Little Richard and Elvis, and Buddy Holly were all rock legends, and he even listened to Woody Guthrie as he kind of developed his musical taste and genre, which would eventually become folk music. Uh, he became really enamored with the social issues, specifically the civil rights movement. He after he kind of became friends with a couple, several different civil rights activists, and he was told that instead of producing songs that were kind of these traditional or commercialized folk songs, a lot of these civil rights activists asked him to produce these songs revolving around social issues, and that's kind of what he did in his second album, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, in 1963. He wanted to create an album and several songs that kind of spoke to the voiceless people in America, specifically, I think, African Americans and other oppressed groups in America, and really bring about issues that he knew a large white demographic would listen to. Uh, these are just some of the meanings behind some of his more famous songs. Blown by the Wind kind of became the civil rights anthem. Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall In, describes the events of the Cuban Missile Crisis that led both the United States and Russia on the brink of like nuclear war. Talking World War III Blues is kind of this very humorous song. It's kind of grim actually, the way the lyrical implications of the song kind of describes the life uh, that would happen if there was a nuclear war and the nuclear fallout and all the devastation that would happen. And it's really this grim song, but he kind of takes a humorous take on it. Masters of War, which is one of my personal favorite songs, kind of blasts just world leaders in general for kind of pushing war. He kind of explains how young men and are used as pawns in this kind of political game. They kind of use war as leaders use war as some sort of game, and he kind of really blasts and takes it to these political leaders. Um, his music kind of took a turn after the Kennedy assassination. Kennedy was kind of this brink for hope in America. He was really changing a lot of things, and with the space program, with education, and he even had some glimmering hope for the civil rights movement. So people were really hopeful under Kennedy, and that kind of all changed when he got assassinated. Nobody knew who did it. Nobody knew if the country was even safe, and it really hurt Bob Dylan. And a lot of historians actually point to the fact that this is when Bob Dylan stopped being political. Nobody knew the future after Kennedy, and people weren't very hopeful, and that kind of spoke to Bob Dylan and his music. Now we come to like the Bob Dylan, like my favorite Bob Dylan story. I did some other research apart from our text. This is my favorite Bob Dylan story, and it's pretty funny in my opinion. Uh, so he kind of met with another legendary group, the Beatles, and uh, he thought they smoked marijuana, but they didn't. He in the song "I Want to Hold Your Hand," which is like one of the biggest Beatles songs of all time, it kind of broke them out in America. He thought the line "I can't hide," which they repeat over and over, was "I get high." So he actually offered them some marijuana, but the Beatles producer and manager, Brian Epstein, was like, no, they've never had it. So he kind of introduced them to the drug, which I thought was very hilarious because the Beatles kind of broke out. And then a lot of the songs were like very. They talked a lot about drugs, specifically the Sgt. Pepper album has a lot of drug references, and I think it's kind of funny that Bob Dylan kind of introduced them to all these drugs. Specifically, John Legend and George Harrison were like really deep into the drug culture. So I think it's kind of funny that Bob Dylan introduced him to these drugs on just an honest mistake, which is, my favorite Bob Dylan story. In conclusion, I think Bob Dylan doesn't have the best voice, or isn't the most incredible guitar player, or didn't change uh kind of the instrumentation of music, but he should be highly appreciated just for the pure fact that he's a lyrical genius, and he kind of changed music from being just this casual thing to having some sort of meaning. And I think that's what we should take away from Bob Dylan, is that he made a lot of social and political change, not just in music, but I think in the world in general. He had a huge impact on the politics of America. And yeah, thank you.